Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Kageyama, and I'd like to welcome everyone here to Be Your Own Hero. I'm a stage 4 prostate, bone, and lung cancer patient slash survivor. Been dealing with cancer since late 2020, early 2021, and doing very well. We are here bringing this to you from Texas and also from California, where my guest is from. And believe me, it's been a process to finally connect with my guest, and I am so beyond thrilled to finally do this. And this is going to be fantastic. So at this point, I'd like to bring on my guest, Irina Borissova. Irina, please introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about who you are, and we're going to get into an absolutely phenomenal conversation.
Well, I sure hope so. I'm Irina Borissova. I am a founder of AI agency. I actually work on AI and create agents for enterprise solutions. But my story is I lost my mom to cancer 9 years ago. And it's been a very difficult process for me. And I would love to share my story about, how people from the families of cancer patients deal with it and how they deal with the death and how it's difficult to process and how guilt comes into play usually because it's you always feel like you could have done so much more.
Absolutely. And when the audience out there hears what Irina had to go through, I mean you could just feel for her situation and for her family. And so how did this journey start with your mom? When exactly did she get diagnosed with cancer? What kind of cancer? And start from there.
Yeah, she got diagnosed 12 years ago. First time she had a breast cancer. She started having a growth around her nipples, so which is like really weird location for breast cancer. Um, and weirdly enough, I mean, where the cancer started is where she had, when she gave birth to me, she had an infection in her breast, and they had to cut it open and get the infection out. So basically, the cancer started in that same breast where all the scars were. And so we don't understand, like, I don't have any history of cancer in my family besides my mom. And what we're thinking is that, which I shared with you before, Mark, is that my mom was an engineer. She was working in a shipyard, building nuclear submarines in St. Petersburg, Russia. And basically, she she was a part of a team of 60 people who also worked on the same project. And out of those 60 people, 40 people died of cancer in the past 20 years. So people started dying. Like I keep hearing from my mom, like this person passed away, this person passed away, and I'm like keep asking like what happened, and she kept telling me it's cancer. And every time it's very aggressive form. People get it, and within like 2 years they end up passing away. So with my mom, it came suddenly. She went through chemo, she went through radiation therapy, and she was in remission for 2 years. And then all of a sudden, she was actually monitored every 6 months, and she was clear. And all of a sudden, she gives me a call and she says, "It seems like it's back." And I was like, "What do you mean it's back?" And I was like, "You've been monitored. Like, how is it back?" And she's like, "Well, like, I did my blood tests, and they did an MRI, and they did, all the tests. I wasn't feeling well, and basically what they said is that not just like I found out later because she wasn't the person who was sharing this with me because she's trying to save me from heartache, and she basically didn't tell me all the details. I found out later that her cancer spread into her liver, her spine, her lungs and her bones. And
How did you
all it
feel
was,
about that?
I,
Finding
I,
out
I
about that
felt,
later.
I felt horrible because I wish I knew. And I wish she was honest with me and she told me exactly what her condition was. Because, my answer was like, well, you're just going to go through treatment again, right? And you're going to be fine. So for me, it was just like, Mom, I don't even know what to say. I mean, you're gonna be okay though. Like, don't make your last will or anything. This is stupid. And at the end of it, she actually ended up making her last will. And I told her she assigned her apartment to my daughter. So my daughter inherited her apartment, and it was just really thoughtful thing for her to do. But she was clearly getting ready to exit this world. And she did not share that with me. I think she thought I would be very scared and upset. I'm a person who is prone to depression. Also, I have bipolar disorder, which I've been battling my entire life. So my mom was really careful with my feelings. And, when I found out later, like I took, when I actually finally went to Russia, so I couldn't go because my passport wasn't ready. And
Let's stay
yeah,
with the
go ahead. let's
timeline.
let's let's stick with the time. So
Yes.
basically she got diagnosed, and I found out about 2 months into that from her best friend that my mom is actually in hospice. And I was extremely surprised. I was like, what do you mean she's in hospice? She's supposed to be in a hospital. Like, what do you mean in hospice? Hospice mean that's it. Like, they're not going to do anything else. And she said, yes, she'd been hiding it from you. And, she'd been telling me all the truth. And here it is, Irina. This is what's happening. She's in really bad condition. I came to her apartment. She called me and we called an ambulance and they took her to hospice because they said, with her diagnosis and what she's already has, that there's nothing they can do. And basically the only option was is to keep her comfortable. So she went there. She actually made a few calls to me, and she had really hard time speaking. Her left side got paralyzed, so her mouth wouldn't move properly. So it was just really hard to understand what she was saying on the phone. So and I was extremely upset and I was extremely scared to hear her like that because she was really articulate person usually, and for me to hear her in that condition was just extremely frightening. And I told you, like, she left me before she passed away, and the way I found out is, again, her best friend called me. She said, it happened last night at 11 o'clock p.m. 11:30 p.m. and on July 30th, and that's that day forever etched in my brain because that's the day of sorrow. That's the day where for 9 years now I celebrate my mom's life. I put candles out. I do everything I can to kind of bring her spirit to life, so to speak. But basically, yes. And after it all happened, like I told you, I couldn't go to Russia even for the funeral because my passport wasn't ready. It was expired. And because of the sanctions against Russia, they closed the embassy in San Francisco. And the process for people to get the Russian passport renewed is really long because there's a lot of people now that they have limited ways of doing it.
Let me pause you there.
Yeah.
Okay. So how is all this affecting you? Because I know it affected you greatly, but
it's
what was going through your mind and, how is it affecting your family?
it affected me. I went into a really deep depression after all that happened because I felt tremendous guilt. I felt that I should have been with her in her last hour, in her last day. I should have been holding her hand. And I felt tremendously guilty for her not being able to share the actual truth with me. And I felt like I'm the person that I should have been there for her. I'm the closest person to her. I'm her only child, and I should have been more supportive, more helpful. But again, I didn't know. I was just literally kind of, in a mode of brushing it off and just saying you're just going to be fine. So for me, I went into a depression for 6 months, and only medicine actually kind of saved me, and not even therapy, because I went through grief therapy as well. And basically that therapy wasn't good for me because I it just brought all the emotions, and they had no solution for me to kind of, have a conclusion or have some kind of a resolution or have a, better feeling at the end of it. So basically medication, that was the only thing that saved me from that depression, and my will of power, because I felt that, what, I can't be in this condition, because she would really really be upset if she saw me this way.
Wow. I mean, I can't even imagine what torture that was for you, not, having your mother be so far away and you're literally helpless at that point.
Yeah,
Talk about that aspect.
I mean, it's really something that, you feel like the wind has been taken out of your lungs. You feel, I called the consulate every other day. They knew me by name at that point, and it took 6 months to get my passport. And, I finally went there to Russia, and I visited her apartment where she left everything, as it was. And, I told her she left all her picture albums, everything that she cared about, out in the open. She left the apartment, and, she was the person who was really, clean and orderly. So she left everything in an impeccable way. Although she went through a hell in that apartment, I know. So for me, it was extremely draining, and I would say grief and guilt that I went through, and I still go through that, 9 years later. It didn't go away. It just became dull, or, it's not as sharp, it's not as painful. But when I think about her, and, when I wake up in the morning, because I told her she used to send me the pictures of beautiful flowers every day to, wish good morning to me. She was really engaged in my life and my daughter's life online. She learned the computer skills just because she wanted to stay in communication. So she was a person who was a huge influence in my life. She was my best friend and my
That
best supporter.
you just mentioned such an incredible thing is she learned how to use a computer because
Yeah.
she wanted to be more involved with you.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. And
Yeah.
so many seniors, a lot of people I know, they're not willing to learn, you know. They just say, "Oh, I'm too old for that." I don't believe that.
Right.
I believe that, you know, you can learn at any age. If you're above ground and you have, most of your faculties, you have the
Hmm.
ability to learn. That's why we live. We live, we're allowed to wake up in the morning, open our eyes, and it's to learn and help people and engage with the world. And,
Right.
and
I
that's
agree with
why,
that 100%.
yes, absolutely. So I think that's a beautiful thing that what your mom did.
Yeah, thank
It
you.
was a
I mean, I,
great
I, I
gift.
think it's just it's so sweet, and she wasn't a obviously she was in the late 60s, and so she wasn't a techie person at all. She was an engineer, so she had a really good brain. So it didn't take me long to teach her how to use a computer, and it was funny how, like, she went through stages. At first, she learned how to save pictures, and the funny thing, she would save the pictures that I sent her, and she give them names, and she called, like, this is Irочка and Alyonka, at the beach in 2019 and whatever. And she was like, she would name every picture, which is just so cute.
That's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. But, uh, you know. for her to make that kind of effort and not make excuses, that's incredible. That's a blessing. Absolute blessing. Oh, we're back. I,
Yes, we
I
are.
I thought
Apologies.
I lost you there.
No,
Go,
somebody keep trying to call me, but I'm not available right now.
okay.
Sorry.
So keep going with your story. This is something that the world needs to hear.
Yeah, so basically I wanted to because I have no history of cancer in my family, and obviously my mom didn't like on her side at all. So we're trying to figure out what happened in this whole story with her work and how people got exposed to radiation in there when they actually working on projects. They're one on the submarine, but they're exposed to the radiation because it's obviously everywhere in there, right? So it's invisible. People don't know it's there. Nobody measured it at that time. And it's also, I mean, it's Russia. They don't really have a lot of precautions. They don't take a lot of precautions in there. Hopefully things have changed in there. I don't really know much because I've been living here for 25 years now. And I only visited back 9 years ago when I went back, after my mom passed away. And so basically, this story is of people keep dying of cancer from the same work environment. And they all had this
What
aggressive forms.
but what's interesting is the timeline from when they were working to the
Hmm.
time that they were, that they got cancer.
Yeah. They basically started having it almost right away after they got exposed. And we have a feeling they got exposed about 40 years ago. And so this entire time, so I think people who got exposed the most started having cancer earlier. And every one of them had a cancer that came suddenly, that was treated, and that returned in very aggressive form. So they all have that same kind of a same pattern in their illnesses. So that's why I'm making that connection. I'm not a scientist, obviously, but I'm making that connection because I don't see how else this could have happened. And it's just like it cannot be a coincidence that so many people, start having this illness after being exposed to radiation of a submarine.
Yeah, we have something not to that point. That's a very exaggerated situation. My family owned a plant nursery in Southern California for 60 years.
Hmm.
And when we were small, when I was like 5, 6 years old, uh, back then the pesticides were so much stronger, and there were hardly any regulations as far as the use. Now, many of those pesticides that were used, like uh, about 60 years ago, uh, are no longer available on the market because they've been banned.
Right.
So what's interesting in my family is my sister, she passed away from cancer. We used to always all play at the nursery.
Hmm.
And my sister passed away from cancer. I got really bad cancer. My next brother, he got prostate cancer. And so the others are on kind of on an alert because of that. But we kind of think that that's where ours originated from. We can't, again, you
Hmm.
can't prove it because of the timeline,
Right.
but it's like a commonality that you can't ignore.
Right. Exactly. Because you try to make a connection, and I think that's part of the trying to process what happened
Mhm.
because it was such a sudden blow. And I kept telling her, she kept telling me the stories of people keep dying. I'm like, Mom, you're gonna be fine. And all of a sudden it hit me and my mom. I would never think that would happen to me and her. Well, I mean, I'm talking about me because we're talking about how I felt. Obviously, what cancer patients go through is the most important thing. And I think what I regret is not finding the right words to support her, and not finding that strength in me, although I didn't know the severity, although this could be an excuse, but I don't think so, because she did tell me it's back. So the second I learned that it's back, I should have been acting differently with her, I think. And I don't know. I think people are really scared of the diagnosis, and people, not obviously people who get cancer, but I think people also who are surrounding people who has cancer, they're afraid to talk about it to them. They are afraid to bring it up. They're afraid to actually talk, ask them questions.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I think there's some kind of a stigma going on. I don't know. People have a feeling that they're probably gonna be intrusive, or they're gonna touch something that that's gonna bring something negative in that person who's going through the cancer. I don't know. I mean, I wish it was different, but I've noticed that not just with myself and my mom. I've noticed it with other people, because when friends of mine are diagnosed with that disease, people usually they tell me people are afraid of them, people are avoiding them, and it's like this is just not a right thing to do.
It should be the opposite, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And I don't understand. It's some kind of a weird human psychology, I think, that people are afraid of a thing, and they trying to avoid the entire topic. They're afraid of it for themselves, but they're also afraid to kind of, like I said, bring any kind of a negative reaction in cancer patient. They're afraid to ask them how they feel, how they go through chemo, what it feels like, all the details. I think people are afraid to ask because they don't want to hear that. Another thing, I don't think they want to hear the negativity. They don't want to hear that, you're throwing up every hour, when you go through chemo, and that it's like it feels like dying. You're going through a nightmare. You're going through chemicals that killing the cancer in your body, but it's also killing the rest of the cells in your body. It's not selective. It's not just killing cancer, it's poisoning you essentially, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think after dealing with cancer for quite a period of time now, I've come to the conclusion that uh, the reason, as a society, we've been taught from a young age that uh, cancer is a death sentence.
Right,
And
exactly.
what we're trying to do is we're trying to change that perception, because it doesn't have to be unless you let it be. What's fascinating, and it's also a sad thing, is I've noticed so many people who uh, hear their diagnosis from their doctor. Oh, you have 6 months to live.
Right.
And like right on 6 months, they end up passing away because they're telling themselves, hey, I've 6 months to live. I have until this date, and then I'm going to die. And you keep putting that in your mind over and over and
Hmm.
over again. And pretty soon your mind buys into it. Your mind says, okay, you're only going to live till then. So
Yeah, it's mind
it's
over matter.
yes, your mind is so powerful. That's the one of the most valuable things that I've learned in my cancer journey is how powerful your mind is. So why don't we use it for the benefit of ourselves as well as others?
I think it takes a lot of strength to put yourself in that frame of mind, because when you've been told you have 6 months to live, you believe that. And you start counting days. You start getting your affairs in order, like you said. You start in planning, and you're thinking, okay, this is it. This is the end of my life. What am I going to do? And I think putting yourself in a frame of mind where, you know what? No, I'm going to fight this. This is not going to defeat me, because this is my body. My mind is not affected. My mind telling me I want to live. And I think you are a great testament to that because, you told me it's been 5 years now and you're doing great. And this is amazing to me because you definitely got a death sentence, back then. And I don't know, I have no idea how hard it is to go through that meeting that with that doctor, that when they invite you to the room and you and your wife and they tell you the diagnosis and they tell you all that things. And I think the first thing in my mind would be hell no. No. You're not gonna put limit on my life because I will fight this. I'll fight with all I got. And you need to put yourself in that frame. And it's difficult because the first thing I think you're gonna feel depressed. You're gonna feel very, very down. And get yourself out of that depression and put yourself into the more kind of a fighting mode. And not a stupid fighting, like, oh, you know what, I'm gonna defeat the odds. No, your mind needs to work. You need to do things every day that are beneficial to you. You need to find solutions that are not just chemicals that the pharmaceuticals give you. And like you told me, supplements and different natural remedies, getting rid of toxins in your body. I think that's extremely important because it's a cause of it. You're not just fighting what the outcome of the illnesses, which is cancer, right? Which is cancer growth. We don't know why those cells grow, but we don't want to make them grow. We don't want to give them room to grow or environment to grow. So we need to cleanse our bodies. And that makes total sense to me. So I think finding different solutions, not just sticking with the, regular remedy that doctors provide you with, like chemo and radiation and radiation, which is usually the first kind of, first thing you do. I think you need to do that, but you also need to research what else you can do with your body.
Yeah, and I say this a lot is when people are diagnosed with cancer, they're caught off guard and instantly they're on defense.
Right.
Uh, because they don't know any better. They don't know about cancer. They haven't researched cancer. They don't know a
Mhm.
lot of the terms. Once you start going through it, you start learning real quickly because it's
Yeah,
affecting your
exactly.
life.
I mean, the first thing you do is you Google everything. You read all the Wikipedias, you read all the medicine pages, you read every research, you try to find a solution for yourself, obviously, and that's the first thing. And also, I also know that your family members start doing the research as well for you.
Yeah, a little bit of knowledge with cancer can be uh, good or bad depending on what kind of knowledge that is,
Yeah,
because
it could be
there's so
misleading.
much
It
out
could be a
there.
lot of quakery going on in there.
Hmm.
A lot of solutions. I've heard that's being offered that literally just vitamins, and it's like you selling me this expensive remedy to cleanse my body and fight cancer that doesn't really do anything.
Hmm.
If you have done a research and if you have a natural supplement or a natural kind of way of getting rid of toxins in your body, you need to do your own research. You need, like
Hmm.
you did, you need to talk to a scientist. You need to not just believe the salespeople because they always want to sell you something. You want to talk to a source. You want to talk to someone who actually came up with the whole idea. They can explain to you how it works. You can try it on yourself. You can measure the results with your tests, right? So you can see literally how how this natural stuff is affecting you and how it's helping you. It's measurable.
Right. Absolutely. I think, and that goes back to making your health journey your own and take the power,
Right.
and you have control. And people don't realize that. People don't realize the power they have over their own lives. Nobody is going to care more about your life than you. And people need to
Exactly.
remember that because, your doctor may care from 9 to 5, but
Mm-hmm.
he's not living with you from 5 to
Right.
midnight or
Right.
however long you're awake. Um, and you're a
Right.
human being. And the thing about individuals in the conventional medical community is you have to carve out your own identity with them. You have to say, "Hey, I'm a person and I need help." And if that doctor is not able
Yeah.
to help you in the way that you want them to, find another doctor.
Find
Until
another one.
it,
Yeah.
yes. I talked to a friend of mine yesterday. I was talking to her and she said, "Man, I've gone through so many doctors, it's not even funny." And so she says, "I don't really want to move because I have the doctors after years and years of searching. I have the doctors that I like that really help me and listen to me." But doctors are human beings. They're different and they are going to do things according to the way they feel is correct. And, but that may not be
Exactly. And
the best for you.
they only know as much as they know. They don't know you. They don't know your body. They you for them they see you 20 minutes a day, maybe once every 2 weeks if you're
15,
lucky. And
15.
what you need to do is you need to fight for yourself. You need to have your own questions when you come to the doctor. Every time you need to get ready. Like you get ready for the meeting, you need to get ready for that meeting with the doctor. You need to get everything in order, all the questions you have, all the things that he may answer for you, and you need to have that map for yourself. You really need to put yourself first and not think that other people think about you 24/7, because you are the only person think about you 24/7, not them. And it's not fair for them either, to like for you to think that you're not the only patient, but for
Mhm.
yourself you are, right?
You're right. Absolutely spot on. I have one final question for you, Irina. If you, in your situation, which you live, and so sorry to hear about your mother, if you had to do it all over again, what would you do differently?
I would find strength in words to express to my mom that she can share with me everything. She can tell me the truth. And I feel that that's the flaw that I have that kind of put me in this position where I have a lot of regret. And I think finding that strength and conveying to the person who has an illness that you're not just there for them in words, you're there for them in actions, and they shouldn't be afraid to tell you the truth.
Well said. Absolutely beautiful. Irina, thank you so much for sharing this story about your mother. And
It's my pleasure.
I continue, I wish the very best for you and your family. And, I know you've learned a lot from that experience. And even though it was, truly
Yes,
heartbreaking, that's the beauty of learning. And you have taken some very valuable lessons that you could use in the future.
absolutely. That actually made me a better person, I think.
Awesome. Awesome.
Thank you so
Irina,
much, Mark.
thank you so much. And thanks to everyone out there for joining us at To Be Your Own Hero. Please like, subscribe, make a comment in the comment section of the video, and make the most out of each and every day. Our lives are short. The bottom line is we go around once and that's it. And time is precious, and the people that we love, we should hold them with the greatest esteem and do everything we can to support them and be there for them, uh, because that's what this world is all about is the people that we touch. Our families are the most important things, next to God, of course. Uh, but make the most out of your time here on earth and make the most out of each and every day, each and every hour, each and every minute, and each and every second. Thank you so much for joining us at To Be Your Own Hero. We will see you next week. Thank you so much.